Here we go! Welcome to some session prep at Jasper's lab. So, hello, good evening everybody. As usual, we're going to be doing some session prep. It's the fourth episode of this series, and I'm truly wondering how the show is going to go this evening. Not because of lack of faith in my capabilities, but because the subject is really difficult. We are going to be talking about foreshadowing. But before we do any foreshadowing, let's first talk some very important stuff, like follow us here. So that's socials, I guess. Follow us here on Twitch. Follow us on YouTube. Hit that like button on every video. Comment. Do stuff. Follow us on Instagram. Go to the Dungeon Master Corner on Discord, where our dear Dungeon Master did a great post about solving mysteries, which might have something to do with the topic that I'm going to address this evening. Just follow us everywhere. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is this Sunday, 9 o'clock Central European Time, you can watch us be live on GaryCon, which we are so proud of, and I hope you join us there, because that will be great. We'll be doing a very special show, kind of a one-shot that's tied into our campaign, but you don't have to have previous knowledge of our campaign, which is pretty cool, I think. And we are still... What I like about it is that we can play the same characters that we play normally on the Precipice of Dreams, which is our main campaign, and still you can get into that groove without needing any previous knowledge about that group. So that will be a lot of fun, and we'll be joined by Rena from Careful Cantrip, who is our guest on that one shot at GaryCon, which we love because we love our friends across the pond. And Careful Cantrip, so that's going on. Then the Monday afterwards, we'll be having Michel do another parallel projections. The Tuesday after that will be a great episode of Talking Void, because I can really talk about that Sunday show we did with my special guest Michel, and I think he's pretty glad about that that show that we'll be doing, and others might be jealous, I think. And that's a great thing, because I'm the host, so I can talk about it anyway. And the main topic of that show, which will be the secondary topic, I guess, will be what was the greatest session that you ever did. And we had some submissions already, even though we normally... Although we talk about it on our show, so we normally start doing this the weekend before it, so that everything is fresh in those who add to the story that we're trying to tell in that show. So yes, as you can see, my head is enormous, humongous on your screen right now. I did some upgrade to the interface, and I'm guessing that if you have like a 60-inch television, my head will actually be bigger than it's in real life, which is amazing because I've got a really big head. This is how I will start the show now. And I'm always looking at that corner, which is strange because I'm looking at that corner in a way, and looking at my own face. I should do the projection window, but for some reason I can't keep my focus on the projection window, even if I set it just beneath the camera. So it's always it seems a bit strange me looking away, but that's because how the layout of my screen is done. I want to make contact with you, but I can't really. Do you know? Giant Jasper, yes, Giant Jasper. I'm called Jasper, but I'm saying Jasper because I'm using an English accent. So that's confusing to me as well. My son comes up to me and said, Papa Jasper, and then I say Jasper, it's Jasper. No, I don't say that. But anyway, that would be quite funny if I mixed up those things a whole lot. Mine was with Michel. Yeah, so Michel has put his foot into the favorite session of Ashley, who's also in chat. Thanks for joining me there. But yeah, the main thing we'll be doing this show is talk about foreshadowing. And people, it's a hard topic. It's really hard, and I've been thinking of how I want to do it, but we'll discuss that after the small but lively introduction. Here we go. Still loving that introduction. And we're live again. So, foreshadowing. Man, what a topic. I looked it up. What is the meaning of the word even, you know? And the first thing that came up is be a warning or indication of a future event. Other news measures are foreshadowed by the white paper, is the example that has been hello that's been given as an example. So foreshadowing is the thing where you might have had an indication of greater things to come, yeah, that's what we're going to discuss. But then I thought, because this is a session preparation, and the first idea I had with the show is that I would be taking the next session that I would be doing, and then saying that how I was going to prep it. You know, I needed an encounter, so I would prepare the encounter. But as is my standard idea, is that I talk a lot about things that surround the main topic. But I still want to do some hands-on stuff, and I have no idea how I'm going to do this with this one. Also, I'm going to try to keep the show somewhat shorter to see if I can fit in more condensed blocks of information, and then continue it in another session with some new information I might be getting from you, the community, and ideas that evolve in some way. So I would have done the show 2 weeks before, but then I was a bit ill, so I didn't do it. And I had prepped for that show, but my preparation has changed like 10 times before I even got here. So let's see what's going to happen. And that Geertje K. who's in chat helped me a bit by talking to me about this topic. And foreshadowing. Well, I gave you a very slim start of what foreshadowing is about. I thought it had been an extra long time since the last Jasper's lab. Yeah, it was. I just figured I had gotten the schedule wrong. You didn't. I just wasn't there 2 weeks ago. And foreshadowing. So in the first episode we did, we called it Getting Started, and we ended kind of on a cliffhanger where the sun was blotted out for a couple of seconds, and a cottage collapsed, and we then in the session afterwards we did an investigation of the cellar that was beneath that cottage, and some strange objects were found. And as we were talking about, we had no idea what these things meant yet, and I still don't. But they were foreshadowing something big that was going to happen, I think. I hope you agree with me, chat. So we could go on that track, but let's first get into some things that I think are important when you are going to foreshadow something properly, and then we can make it smaller and smaller until we have something to work with. So we're going to our white screen. Foreshadowing. Yeah. So what I think is when you you can do the foreshadowing as we did in the first and second episode of this series. But when you want to do a really great job at foreshadowing, you might want to do a little bit more. So, and this is where it gets a bit complicated, because for foreshadowing you really need that end goal. You need to know what's going to happen in the big scheme of things. And so I think you need to know something about the world that the players are going to be in. You have a sense of what your campaign is about. So these are two different things for me. The world is like, does it revolve around this axis? Is it a flat world? How does everything work and everything? And then the campaign is more of the difference between the campaign and adventure is not so much that in the sense of a campaign setting, but in an adventure is part of a campaign. That's my idea, at least. So, for example, exploring a goblin cavern, as we did in episode 3, that's a small adventure set into this bigger campaign where you start as a possibly a first level character and evolve into a 20th level character. So I've decided, by the way, to keep it Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, so we can communicate somewhat simpler, easier. Although I'm guessing that these things can apply to other settings as well. Hey, welcome, and thanks for the subscription. So cool. I just mentioned your Dungeon Master Corner stuff, Roger. So you'll be not really be going to that one, but I think that has something to do with foreshadowing in a sense. So the campaign is the long track that you're on with your characters, and there might be all these arcs, like a cool Greek drama, so to say, where the players shift from place to place and experience all kinds of things. But the thread that might connect all these adventures might be the thing that's happening in the campaign, so to speak. But then you have the actors, and those are really tied into the campaign in a sense, because if you don't have actors or non-playing characters, possibly buildings or monsters, if you even distinguish between monsters and NPCs. Good evening, Uncharted Creed. Thanks for joining us. Just explaining the foreshadowing a bit of everything, and what I think you need to be a good foreshadowing dungeon master. So you have to set you have to know which actors are doing stuff, and then you have the time aspect of it, and this is time within the campaign, and it's time with your players at the table. For example, because I'm going to talk a lot about real life examples from my Dungeon Master experience, and I'm going to give you an example of something that I used as a kind of foreshadowing aspect in a one-shot. So I had this group of players who wanted to do a one-shot. One of the people in there knew me and knew that I was a dungeon master, and they had never played, but they had this gaming evening. And so he asked me, hey Jasper, could you come and be a dungeon master for us for like a single evening, because we want to experience that. And I thought, wow, this is great, cool, okay, I'm going to do that. So I prepared a small adventure. It started at an inn. Something neutral happened at the inn. Something dangerous happened at the inn that sent them on the way to investigate stuff. And so they had you had the investigation part, and you had to be enclosed in by monsters part. You had the escape part, and then you finally had the part where the escape part was from a later part. No, you had to go into a crypt part and confronting the boss part. And then you had the foreshadowing part, in a sense. So the adventure was, and I thought, this is a one shot, let's do this in like 4 hours, maybe 5. You're a meat in an inn intro. Either that's pretty funny, and otherwise I still think it's funny, because they were meat in an inn, in a way. So this group of players that had never played before, I had reduced character sheets for them with the skills on it, and an attack and a spell for the spellcasters and everything. but me being me, I didn't make it too easy. And they were in this inn called The Last Battle, I think. Yeah. And they were sitting there, and this guy came up to them and played a game of cards with them. And then this dead-looking man came walking in, and he had this piece of his body replaced with glass, which had green fumes in it. And that zombie, so to say, scratched a patron of the inn, and then they stood up and they tried to defeat that character. And then they thought, well, what's happening here? And then the watch came, and he said, well, it's so busy in this city, and that's why I can't investigate all of these things, because we have all these immigrants coming here because the main capital was destroyed and stuff. So we are always hiring people to investigate these things, and these players who wanted to do this thing, decided that they wanted to do this. I do love the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. 1, never start in an inn. Crit Roll Season 2, we are meeting in an inn, right? Yeah, so that's the trope and meme thing. There's nothing wrong with, about starting in an inn. It's just so cool to start at an inn. Because for everyone, the experience is unique and never the same twice because of, well, where the story is going and stuff. Although you don't have to start in an inn, of course. But I wanted to do the trope, of course. Although there weren't any rats, there was a zombie with a glass belly and green stuff. So when they killed the zombie, the glass broke and the fumes came out and corrupted a few patrons, and they stood up as zombies and attacked as well. So there was a sense of what that green stuff did. So then they went on to investigate who this person was, and the innkeeper recognized this person because he was a patron of the inn. And he said, but he died. I went to his funeral. So then they went to his late wife, and being just love that, a fresh party, people who've never played, no experience between them whatsoever. Although they all play World of Warcraft, and they had a sense of fantasy about that, but that also meant that they were in this shoot, really believing that this was the only option and stuff. Or you can't jump onto a ledge or something. They went to this lady and they talked to her, which was a bit awkward. Other stuff happened as well, and then the first session was over. Because, I had to explain the rules, and one shot and became a free shot, so to say. So and finally they came to realize that there was something happening at the crypt, and that there was this priest there who was doing stuff with the undead, and this guy, after he died, was transformed in this zombie with this glass belly with smoke inside of it. And so they finally defeated the boss, which went pretty easy, although he had an army around him. And then they saw this vault door, which had the number 42 on it, because 42 is always a funny number. And they opened it, and they saw rows and rows of these zombies. And that's where the one shot ended. Then they called in the cavalry, and they got awarded for what they did. But the foreshadowing part, of course, in this adventure is the fact that there was this massive vault with a number 42 on it that had an implication of bigger things. And because it was a one-shot and it ended there, they would never be able to know what was happening. But they had this sense of greatness. And that's what I wanted to accomplish, to let them know that an adventure doesn't end where the session ends, but something starts happening in your... Okay, so I have to talk about this. Uncharted Creed says, wow, that's a one-shot that discovered the meaning of life. Yeah, all in one go. And Ailey says, I feel like there are also so many ways to make the trope unique. No inn is ever the same. Uncharted also says, first dilemma as a player in an inn, do I get drunk or not? Yeah, that's true. As he says, to mess with my players, I started them just before they got invited to a wine cellar blown in, to then go to another inn. Yeah. And the funny thing is, they wanted to play. They wanted to play on because I had teased them with something. And this is where you get all these ways in what you really want to foreshadow. I teased them because there were bigger things on the horizon, and I ended up being their dungeon master for up to 3 years now. We play monthly, and it's a great group. They are now level 8, which is like the quickest leveling I ever did. Not over 3 years, but on a monthly basis it is. And yeah, they are doing all kinds of stuff. But after that first part, they didn't go back there. This watchman who had also met them at the inn said, we'll take care of it now. We have some leads and stuff. And one of the characters took a kind of key with the symbol of the evil god of my world on it, and he put it in his bag, and that was about it. They got sum of money for it. They got the attention on the stage in the city, which was great, and they also got the attention of another person because, of course, these that vault belonged to somebody. But they didn't realize they got the attention of that said person. And so they went on a chain of quests where they had to retrieve a book for a wizard. And what else did they do? They went to this city where they got kicked out. They went back to the city to confront a moneylender which went astray. They went to a city under the main city where they were to try to escape from something, where they met a couple of monsters. They had a wilderness trek. They went to the monastery of one of the players where they confronted a devil-like creature within glass glass, imagine that. And all these kinds of things kind of happened, but there were always tie-ins to those first 3 sessions. And they didn't realize it. And that's how I like my foreshadowing. Because as possibly Roger and Eric, who are, I think, also in chat, might say, they know that I can play the long game pretty well. To frustration maybe sometimes. I have to be very careful about that. Because I love Lost. And not everybody loves Lost. There were all these things that tied in. And at one time I was driving home with one of the players, and he said to me, we started this whole adventure with this one shot, and I'm a bit bugged out, because I still want to know what happened in the vault, why that vault was there. I said, well, why don't you go on exploring? Yeah, but because everybody is doing other stuff, but I still have questions about this stuff. Then go and do something about it, I said to him. But because they had been playing for 3 years now, but on a monthly basis, so that's like 12 sessions a year, and they were still quite kind of new, and they gained power quite quickly, in a sense. He didn't have a sense that he could do this, and that's where I could be guiding the players a bit more. And then in a more recent session, all the characters came to a carnival, kind of a dark, sinister carnival in the Shadowfell. Oh man, when I talk about it this way, it seems like a lot has happened, and possibly a lot has happened, but you never realize that when you're playing, right? Came to a carnival, and they met this truthsayer, and that person showed one of the characters how he would die, and he saw himself die with that key in his hand, and putting it into a vault door that had the number 27 on it. So that was a throwback again. But there have been all these kinds of moments where they either just passed the markers for the main quest, so to say, and just saw it as something different, you know. But recently, in the last session I had, or the previous 2 sessions, they discovered that the one who has been sending them on all these quests is really kind of, well, not so good guy. And suddenly they have to start reproducing what they have done in the last 3 years of playing, and why things have happened to them, because there's a logic to it. And that's, I think, what foreshadowing does. It doesn't tell you straight away what is about to happen, but it teases you at certain points, and it gives you nudges into a certain directions without you really knowing it as a player. Because otherwise you are just following a trail. So foreshadowing has a certain aspect of mystery to it that isn't obvious in the main plot line. So how does this fall into this foreshadowing guidelines that I've set up here? Well, I know my world, I know what's happening there, so I understand the things that could tie into the characters playing these adventures that I write for them. My campaign is about them resolving some issues of their own, but I want them to feel tied in, because I can only play once a month with them, and I want to feel it significant for them. The adventures are standalone, pretty difficult, and sometimes pretty large as well, and they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And everybody gets kind of a part to play in it, and learn something about their background. The actors are really behind the scenes, although one of the actors is pretty much has been in front of them the whole time. I'm not saying that he's really part of the foreshadowing stuff per se, although he might be, but the players don't know this yet, and they don't know if they're watching. So what was I going to say? And then you have the time thing, and that's the hardest part for me, because you have the time in the campaign that progresses, and you have to think about what will happen, because for a good thing to be foreshadowing, there has to be a kind of definite point in the adventure where things will shift and you get into the rush of things to complete whatever you need to stop or progress or something. Oh, what do I mean with actor? A good question, Uncharted. An actor is are those non-playing characters, those monsters, even those events that happen, that progress the story in some manner, that have their goals, that have their events triggered and stuff. So, for example, Saruman manipulating Gandalf into doing stuff, and then Gandalf comes to know this as a battle and gets locked up on the top of the tower. That is because this actor had quite another motivation, while key moments in the story. Key moments and evolving plans. So the person who is behind these vaults has a goal with them. They've just seen these vaults with rows and rows with zombies with these glass bellies, but they don't know what they are for. And these zombies aren't the main goal; they are a means to an end for this villain, so to say. And but they make part of the story. So if they ever would start to investigate that thread of the adventure, they would come up could come up with certain conclusions. So lots has been said. Oh, here we go into a Douglas Adams thing. The Babelfish is one of the best written pieces ever. Oh, and God disappeared in a puff of logic. Afterwards, men went on to prove that white was black and black was white, and got themselves killed on the next zebra crossing or something like that. Ashley says there's a difference between playing the long game and starting a series with a huge budget, not knowing how it will end and making it up at 5 minutes to 5 on the final Friday of a shooting. I lost. Yeah, oh wow. 27 bloody rock stars. Yeah, 27 is such an age, I will always love the introduction of the guide. Better selling than 100 more things than but okay, that's an Adam Douglas. I will skip that a bit. But do you know right away, or do you tease something and figure something out based on the player's choices? Well, okay. So I think these are relevant components to a good foreshadowing. But as I started the show, I was saying that no, you can start with ominous things just happening and not knowing what they mean. But I think that at a certain point you have to develop this, because otherwise, you can't keep on reacting to the players and letting them experience an adventure that constantly grows around them. But when and you can retrofit some information afterwards as well. But when players suddenly realize that some things are so meticulously planned and they could have done things about this, you shouldn't treat these things as a fixed point, like this will always happen. No, that's not the right way to do it. You should use these events like things where they could go another way, but with the information that they have, they probably won't, or they might feel queasy about it, or have a strange gut feeling where they have to talk to their players and they say, yeah, but what can we do about it? And let's just bring this book back to the wizard, for example. And when you later would reply that the mission you got to bring back the book was nothing more to get you at a certain place at a certain time so that certain things would happen to you, that makes it like they fell into a trap. They were had, so to say, and I think that's a great feeling as a character. It's the same with like you've been thinking of this adventure in such a straightforward way, and suddenly you realize that you are part of this big cosmos where you really have an influence. But you can go too far. That's what I was trying to say. And their time can be your enemy. For example, when this person was sitting in my car and saying it feels like we're doing all this stuff and it really has nothing. And where's the main storyline in this adventure? What's really happening? Why aren't we? Where are we going? Especially with players who like the end boss to be in the top of the highest tower. These things can be a bit daunting, so you have to pull them back in at certain points. And so when he said that, I knew that I had to do something, and I did that at the carnival, where I gave them visions about certain stuff, and one was with another vault and this key. And the conclusion of the arc they just finished, which is for me is the first part, has set them on quite a different adventure within the session. So that's what foreshadowing is about, I think. Having kind of real other people moving at their own pace, doing stuff in the world, changing stuff around the characters, just nearly noticeable for the characters, and directing the narrative in such a way that when they finally get a hint, they can they realize what they have been a part of all along. Uncharted says, yeah, I don't want a railroad, but man, sometimes the side tracks go all over the place. Yeah, so that's where a good guiding hand, not in the form of a dungeon master hand, but events that shape around that experience, can really redirect the players towards the road they need to travel. So you're talking about railroad. We had a discussion about railroading on Discord as well. And it's not that easy to say that things are either railroad or open world or open-ended and anything, because in a way you always need kind of a railroad to get them to a certain point. And then, otherwise there isn't any adventure. There's just random stuff happening. Ashley says, to quote a legend of the game, Matt Colville, rails get a bad rap, but roller coasters are on rails, but people seem to enjoy them. Yeah, so Matt Colville, if you ever want to see his very funny but also true way of how he talks about indirectly in the Dungeons & Dragons setting about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that's a pretty good episode. I think it's one of the earlier ones, maybe around episode 20 or so. It's really good. And recently, yes, he's been talking about that railroading indeed isn't that bad, because it has gotten kind of a bad rap, but it isn't a bad thing. Because when you enter a dungeon, you get into the entrance and you exit through the exit, which might again be the entrance, but from that point on, you have to do stuff. And you can't just say, oh, I'm going left where there's a wall. Unless you have kind of phasing spells, of course. But, yeah. So that's the first thing I had to say about foreshadowing. What do you think so far? Am I on the right track? Are you learning stuff? What kind of questions do you have about what I'm saying? Yeah, tell me. I'm taking a sip of water while I'm reading the comments. Because, I'm talking quite a bit and it's rough on my throat. Especially after I've played Bowen yesterday, because, man, I have to really learn to be a better voice actor, because I'm destroying my voice when I do his voice on the show. Because I'm making it really guttural, but I can't continue doing that. Voice acting. You hear me saying voice acting? Man. Anyway. So, I've given you an example of how I have done voice talking. Yeah, that could be a great one. Yes, sounds interesting. Well, thank you, Uncharted Creed. So now we come to the part where we have to decide how we are going to foreshadow something on the show and become practical with it. And that's really hard, because then we really have to write a campaign in a way. At least if we are doing it in the way that we are, that I'm saying I'm doing it here. So I think we can't do that, and we have to return to where I did a one shot. And ended with those zombies being in this vault as a teaser, and then started to fill in the blanks afterwards. So we have a teaser where the sun has blotted out somewhat, and this thing collapsed. Ashley says, how many of your foreshadows actually lead to nothing, due to players moving away or just not getting around to it? Do you throw a whole load in and see what sticks, or just keep doing hints at the same one? Well, okay, so that's interesting to say, Ashley. If you are doing the foreshadowing quite right, things will happen anyway. The only thing that might not happen is that the players are involved in them. But players tend to get involved anyway, because that's what makes them, they don't see the most blatant things you put in front of them, and they stick to a grain of sand if they think that it's interesting enough to pursue. So you really have to, as a dungeon master, and I have quite a lot of years of experience, they always go for it. And if they don't go for it, then they go for it in the end as well. And that might sound like a big railroad, but it really isn't, because it's the journey and not the goal. Uncharted says, I'm running my first campaign, but I started with Curse of Strahd because A, I love the campaign, and B, I didn't feel ready to create everything on for a long time period. Yeah, so I have been designing an adventure for my wife and my oldest son, and possibly for my daughter as well, but don't know if we are going to play it in the evening, and she's a bit young. And I was developing this and everything, and I finally bought the starter box for Dungeons and Dragons, which is pretty funny because I have so much knowledge in my head. But for the Lost Mine of Phandelver. Well, anyway, you know what I mean. And I started reading it, and I was really enjoying it very much. And I think it's a great adventure already. It's straightforward. Well, it starts off straightforward, and I love it immediately. It's pretty well written, and I thought this time let's not make it too hard on myself and just start him off with that, because it will get dark anyway sooner or later. And my son is nearing 10, or he's 10 next month, and but I will of course be treating him like 13 plus with parental guidance from his mother, and possibly getting nods when I'm going over the edge. But there will be corpses and bloated bodies and stuff in it at some point, I think. Vandelver, ha, no caps, much quicker. That's funny because on my screen I was first. Well, on my screen Michel is first, and then Ashley follows pretty quickly. Ailey says, "Lol, stick to a grain of sand if they think it's interesting. I feel so bad when we do this to our dungeon master." What? So Geertje is my wife. Anyway, yeah, you know it by now. She still has to cope with the idea of building a character. But after so many years, I finally want to introduce her to the game, and I think it would be great to do it together with my son. So there's really no out for her anyway. Don't feel bad, Ellie, because in the end that's what we dungeon masters love, although it can be a bit frustrating when it really is a grain of sand and you get stuck on it for a whole session. On the other hand, it gives you time to think about what to prep next as a dungeon master as well. So that's it's all good in a way. And I have with my long-term group that where my campaign lasted for 9 years now. They did a couple of things that made them think about things I had planned in such a different way that the adventure went a whole different way, and I just loved it because it threw the whole thing. It put everything into a very different perspective, so to say. That was fun as well. It's Matt Mercer's chair. Yeah, I love the chair. And I think that's great because I think we all know that there's nothing wrong with the chair, and the players know it as well. So it's become a running gag, but that's okay. So maybe this kind of another topic, but but it has something to do with it, because I think time is a really important thing, but repetition is another thing that's quite important, and that's that when you keep on throwing your characters into misery, for example, or when every person they meet eventually betrays them, that can be quite frustrating. If they never have this safe place, this place where they can go, where they know who their friends are, when their best friends are always being dominated by mind flayers or turned against them through greed or something, then eventually the whole world will feel unsafe. And that's the thing you have to be very careful with when you're doing foreshadowing stuff, that you tease them but never give them something. And that really is the peril of my dungeon mastering. I know I've left out things for that I can be too stingy with my answers, and I shouldn't do that, but I'm sometimes unable to progress the game in a way that I say, doesn't matter, it's their fun and they should know an answer right now because they have earned it or something. I sometimes can't do that because of logic, and that's the thing that sometimes stops me from being a great dungeon master at points. And I've talked about this with our current dungeon master as well, and he says that he isn't too bothered by that because it's just different kinds of dungeon master style. And I think on Careful Cantrips show that just aired on YouTube, where I was a guest and Shanks was a guest and Mike from GaryCon was a guest. Now I forget what I wanted to say. And I just forgot what I was going to say. So I was talking about being a great dungeon master, doing my best. Oh, is that that you sometimes have to get through the hard stuff. When you really want to play a 9-year-long campaign, then not every session will be great, and sometimes a couple of sessions after each other will not be great, and you have to be able to say that after that it will be great once again. And that's the cooperative storytelling that you're doing with your players, where you just bite through those harsh points and come back stronger. Where I'm going with this? Oh yeah, so it's pacing really. When I'm talking about time and repetition, it falls under a header called pacing. You have to really sometimes pace your game, but you have to have the trust of your players as well. So, getting a bit off topic, but still on topic, I don't know. So, Ashley says, oh, for chairs you can beat Dave on Careful Cantrip. That is a Dungeon Master sheet to end all others. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a really wooden chair, so to say. Either that or he's actually only 3 feet tall. I can confirm he is over 3 feet tall and just has an epic chair. I think he's literally built it. Well, yeah, I heard that as well. Let's... I will not be running that go. I think I'll do another quarter of an hour and then we'll finish it for this evening. But let's start having an idea of what we are going to foreshadow in our homebrew world that we made for this adventure. Let's scroll a bit back to the beginning. Pleasantville, arrival at the cow. Oh, yeah, that's that. That's okay. So we have a world where Uncharted says, do you even struggle with revealing stuff? Like they roll on a natural 20, you have to give them something, but actually want to keep the secret at that point. Well, okay. I'm going to answer that question. That's a very good question. When I was a teenager, I would sometimes really go out of my way to not reveal a secret. These days, I reveal everything I can when the person that I know that the players are talking to has the information or can deduct the information. And especially with high rolls, yes, I'm telling them everything, because that gives them a great sense of control. That can shift the balance all the way back to the players, where they think, aha, I got you, Dungeon Master, which is not true, because you want them to get you, because it's a cooperative game. Those are the most exciting things for a Dungeon Master as well. It sounds like something that I read today. Yeah, that's why I think it was pretty funny that you wrote it, Roger. On the Discord, Roger wrote a pretty good piece about this. Like, if a player gets it, reveal it, and you should go and read it there, because I want to do it here because you have to get to our Discord, of course. Anything. A new god is trying to ascend to supremacy. He is actually fighting the sun god, and that's why everything went dark. Foreshadowing by Dream for most religious PC. Huh. Silly players thinking they can outsmart the Dungeon Master, but they can really do this. So the most amazing thing that can happen to a Dungeon Master, from my perspective, is that they think of stuff that you didn't even think of, but in the greater scheme makes sense. It fits into your cosmology, it fits into your campaign, it fits with the motives of the characters and everything, and that's that's so great. When through sheer logic they find out something about your world and outsmart you. Such a good sense. And we aren't talking about rules here. That's another thing. The Dungeon Master doesn't have to be the best at knowing all the rules, although it can come pretty in handy. It is not up to the Dungeon Master to know everything, and he can just say, or she can say, or they can say, I'm just going to read it up because I don't know the answer to this thing, and then that's great. Actually, thanks to a conversation on this show, I only have a loose idea of the answer to any of my puzzles. Whatever cool things the PCs come up with will now usually be the answer. Such symbiosis goal. So that was Ashley and Ailey after. Yeah, so you're touching on something again, Ashley, because that's why I think foreshadowing does need a goal. You do need to know what is actually happening. You don't have to find the solution for the players, because there are too many solutions, but the thing must be real. If something is supposed to be deadly, it has to be deadly. But the way to get over the deadly part of an encounter or a trap or whatever, an event, that can vary, but you cannot loosen the rules so far that they don't make sense anymore. At least that's where I draw the line. So be a bit careful with that, because otherwise the sense of being a mortal creature is taken away from you. I feel very mortal when I'm playing Bowen. I think all our characters are feeling very mortal, because I so know I can die in that campaign. You know, we have this great idea that we are going to do a show called The Precipice of Dreams, and we'll be doing that for years to come. But I think we can actually die very hard, and then we really have to think of what we're going to do next. It's not the story that's leading, it's the events, and it's the deadly world, and it's the... it's overcoming all these things. And when you see our battle in episode 19 of The Precipice of Dreams... can someone link to YouTube? There you will see that we are getting to a point where we, because we do combat in a silly way sometimes, I think, where we really had to get to the point where we had to pull everything from our memory, from the rules, from our features, just to be able to survive, and we did. And there was no slack given by the dungeon master, or at least I don't think so. At least it didn't feel so. It felt very logical what happened at every step. Yeah, there's the link. So just watch that episode to see what I mean. Now I'm doing other stuff again. But Ashley said something great. Ashley said, a new god is trying to ascend to supremacy. He is actually fighting the sun god, and that's why everything went dark. Foreshadowed by a dream for the most religious PC. Yeah, okay. There we go. There we are going to foreshadow stuff. So now I'm going to, because I like to draw stuff, which you might know by now. Damn me getting on topic. Yeah, imagine that. Man, have you been... sometimes I'm so bad at OBS. I've been doing this all the whole time, putting it on the screen, like and being tiny again in the left bottom corner. But for you, I was big the whole time and just talking like mad. So these are the rules I put up. I don't know. Think you missed anything really, but this is the foreshadowing thing I was talking about. The rules that I've set up for myself as being important to this adventure. But let's start drawing, right? And I'm not really going to draw. I'm going to put words on paper and draw lines and stuff between those words because of how they interconnect. And we today we'll be thinking of what the main big... You foreshadowed yourself, Ashley, says Uncharted. Yeah, I think so too. Oh man, I love your interaction. Just have to tell you this. I love how you are interacting with each other and interacting with me. Thank you so much for that. So meta. So this was the drawing of the previous Goblin Cavern. Still pretty proud of it. And now I am going to do this. I have a whole clean sheet. I'm planning to do it that way so you can see what we did previous episode. And if you haven't seen it, say, oh man, I have to watch that episode, you know. Marketing. So, I think we are going to have an event, so to say. And we're going to build a timeline in a sense. And this timeline looks like this. I'm going to write down what we discuss here in between so that we can recap in the next preparation show. So this is where we start our adventure, and this is the end. Well, not the end of the adventure possibly. It could be of a sub-adventure, like for example in Critical Role the Dragon Story arc, you know. Okay, so this is an interesting thing because I think Vecna... oh man, did you all watch Critical Role? Well, anyway, the thing that happened at the end of the first season of Critical Role was what had been happening from a very early point on. We haven't seen the whole adventure because they started at level somewhat, and then they did a couple of arcs, but some of these arcs were always tied into the big thing that happened at the end of Critical Role. And that was foreshadowing in a quite blatant way at some points, being diverted with such things as Chroma Conclave, which spread disaster in the lands as they came rushing and blasting the capital of Amon. Well, here we go again. To blisters and them having to defeat the dragons, but still there was this bigger threat lurking, and I thought that was really interesting how Matthew did that. Be calling him Matthew, Mr. Mercer, so to say. I want to meet him someday. Start. So Ashley says, "Oh, the hand of Vecna, what an awesome moment." Yeah. This guy named Nightbot says, "Like what you see, please consider pressing the follow button and support us." Imagine that. What a nice guy, that Nightbot. But I think we have something as simple as having a god wanting to blot out the sun will really work for this. Amen. Yeah. Where is the Tel'Darai Council when you need them? Yeah. Wondering that myself. I love the inclusion of everything that's happening right now in season 2. I'm a critter, as well. So, what's the goal? What's the goal of this person who does stuff? Who are on the Tel'Darai Council? Yes, I want to know. Let me see. Even kijken, I wanted to say, which is so Dutch. Which is let me see, but in the kind of shorthand way. A new god is trying to ascend to supremacy. He is actually fighting the sun god, and that's why everything went dark. So we have to know something about. One of them just died, Michel, because you asked that. Says Uncharted. Yeah, maybe. So we. The most simple thing is that we have a start and we have an end. But first we have to know some stuff. We have to know the actors, so to say. So we have, by now we have, let's just run with this. The sun god. And now we're going to a pretty standard kind of thing where we at least have gods. As we are doing this, we are also developing the campaign, so to say. We have the sun god and we have the new god. Right? Okay. And oh my god, I thought it only happened for the players. Well, Matt didn't say it counted only for the players. So now, so this new god is rising to power. Why? I love the question why. I'm a philosopher. I have a BA in philosophy, so I can. When I say the word why, it's pretty meaningful. No, just being funny. Yes, I'm being funny. Anyway, so there's a new god. Why is there a new god? And why does he want to defeat the sun god? That's what we have to know. So, anybody in chat? Anybody? Please, anybody, can you tell me why this new god is even coming to this world? Or why he has a goal of overthrowing the sun god? Why is Gamora? Because he's an usurper mage that went power mad and started a cult. Okay. So this is an ascendancy story then. A bit like, so to say, Vecna. Jealousy, sun shines brighter. Could also be a good case. So is the interesting thing, has this person always been a god? Or not? Sort of like a necromancer becoming rich, but for a mage. I don't think only necromancers can become witches though. Funny enough, but that doesn't matter in this conversation. Jealousy, I like jealousy. We could combine those things, of course. So there's a new god, but something must have happened then, right? In the past, for this necromancer, this new god, this jealous type to want to blot out the sun. Something must have happened. You have to find the core of it. Maybe the sun god is just the easiest god to find because he's at the center of the world. Student that wants to become the master. Oh, I love that as well. So possibly started out as follower of the sun god, got betrayed by the sun god, or felt he was betrayed by the sun god, or she. And Ellie seems to love that. The new god wants to usurp the sun god or destroy it. A demigod of the sun god. Do you mean an avatar in a way? Or like an Anakin Obi-Wan Kenobi thing? Yeah, so, okay. We have a 0.8 as well. Let's pick that one. So, the new god. What do we know? Was a follower slash avatar slash proxy of the sun god, got jealous. New god feels that the sun god is not allowing them to showcase their power, etc. Tries to usurp. She was his daughter, but with a mortal mother. Also a good idea. Kid. Got jealous, didn't get attention. Is rising to power or is already on this level but has to prepare for it? Now I'm falling quiet, right? Because they are thinking as well. So then we have to know, I think, because we can do a bit of stuff for the sun god. As an avatar, she would be mostly there in power, could attempt a coup. Oh, okay. So now we have a child of the sun god who was already in power but feels jealous of that power because her father isn't giving her any attention. You know, it's okay. It's the same as with an inn. The things that are, it's the most common thing, you know. Even if you think of murders in real life, that they happen most in the family. How do you say? A family circle, so to say. He's a bit of a hothead. So the sun god. He's the most prominent god by far in this thing, right? Because we have this world where the sun is in the middle and it shines all around it towards the surface, and night only happens when there is a moon in between the sun and the earth, which moves quite slowly but in great patterns, so that that it is night at least sometimes, you know. Sometimes for a longer one when two moons pass after each other. Maybe it's a new god of darkness. Yeah. Maybe she becomes a god of darkness or tries to find... okay. So we have a child of the sun. I'm going to write this down for next episode and then we're going to recap. So I'm just taking notes now. So, wants to become the opposite of the sun. Darkness. A darkness cult. I love darkness cults. Okay, now we have to know something about, because the other actor is the sun god. This is, we named him a father, so probably male then in a sense, although in these times you could even call it a day. And that might even be good, because that will for a pretty diverse way of if this is a child and it's kind of a Zeus kind of character, then the sun god might be a mother to some and a father to others, and be really out there and not paying any attention to all those creatures that he's left behind. Maybe this kind of a Teros aspect, right, Ashley? Or as we call it in these Greek mythology. So the sun god has been the main god for centuries, millennia, something like that. For centuries. Yep, he's head of the pantheon. Now there's a pantheon. So would it be great if this guy lived in the sun, so to say, and then the moons surrounding it are like the realms of the other gods? Oh man, we are building... pretty... Well, in a way. I know a bit of the story. I've never played it. Head of the pantheon. Usually triad structure works. Air, water, earth. As the other gods, do you mean? It could be other aspects as well, like death and good, evil, order, chaos. They could all be chaotic, like the Greek mythology. Yep, major gods are usually elemental forces, like Zeus being in control of the weather and stuff. Is that what you mean? But it's the way you have to think about this, because they are usually those forces because people make sense out of these big forces by attributing them to a god. But if you think about that the gods were there and created stuff, they don't really have to be they could be the force of creation, for example, as well. Sun is light, so we need darkness. Yeah. Well, there's a big light and dark aspect coming into this story. I like the Greek kind of mythology kind of thing where everything is a bit chaotic. Like that's why the sun god isn't suspicious of what's happening around him. Like maybe the first thing he had a migraine when the sun blotted out for a second, and then it was the first time that he even gave attention to this stuff. I think so, right? So we have event 0. Blotting out the sun. And this is event 0 for the characters, by the way. This is not the event 0 for what's happening, because it has been happening for a long time. It is all about the story and the ritual for making up gods. If he is the head god, for example, during darkness, people will light a candle to burn through the night to ensure the sun comes back. That is how you build the believable god myths. Yeah. True. Yeah, but so to say, you could. Okay, this is a bit of a difficult subject, of course, because I don't want to be. I'm agnostic myself, and I don't want to step on the toes of religious people in chat. But you could think about like God, the biblical God, so to say, that you could think of him in both ways. He was the one who really created the world and everything on it, and he was a just and a good God, or he was made real by the beliefs of the people that followed him, because they saw all these things happening and they had to attribute to creation someone who could create these things to make it logical for them. And so they started believing that there are two paths in a way. And they are quite different, but it doesn't really matter for this right now. If we say if the pantheon has human aspects to it, or aspect of different species to them, then we can just say that it follows the Greek pattern in a way, or about every pantheon pattern that there has ever been, I think, in this world. It's different with things like Buddha and God in a sense, but the Christian God, so to say, or Allah, or no, whatever. So we have our event 0, the blotting out of the sun. This is where the characters come in. We have an event, the destruction of the cottage, destruction of the cottage. Those are the things that we start off with. Then we have kind of father, mother, son, daughter kind of thing which involves jealousy because of stuff. I think that's where we will continue this next session prep. Getting back to this, could the dimming of the sun be as much as mortals could discern of the mighty battle on the sun? But soothsayer in the next village has had over readings of betrayal and great strife. We'll get into that one, Ashley, next session prep. As I said, I'm trying to keep them a bit shorter. And I think we've started a great thing here, where we can do the foreshadowing together and plan something out, campaign-wise, and see how we can become practical for the next session, for example. So in a sense, we have started an adventure that started in Pleasantville with a bard quest. Then we had the get ambushed by goblins on the road to the next village thing. Then we had the goblin cavern. Sounds familiar, right, in a way. And that might have been a couple of sessions, and now we're getting into a session where we want to foreshadow something again. But we are going to work towards that goal by building on what we have created here. The sun god being attacked by a child of him who has become jealous and wants to make darkness the thing that is pretty dominant. Is the most dominant thing in this world. Too much god lore in my head, reading all of the god encyclopedias. Yeah. So let's leave it at that for now. I'll work on this in between sessions. That's so cool. Let's call them sessions, these episodes, right? Or am I too upfront with that? I don't know. And next time we'll continue this. So, with this major meta talk about foreshadowing and starting to do some real stuff. If you have any feedback, I'm glad to hear it. Could be on the YouTube, could be now, could be any way you want it. You could address me on Discord or something. And I'm already looking forward to the next one. I'm starting to feel really comfortable with you. I hope you feel the same way. So let's continue this journey. And let's keep it at that for now. Sounds good. Okay, a session, Jasper. Jasper, you do it again, Jasper. Always a pleasant evening, and Uncharted Creed says cool. Thank you. And we'll continue this on the next one. So, we'll do the Talking Void outro after this. And I had a great time. I hope you had a great time, but I'm guessing that you had a great time then. And until the next time, be sure to watch us Sunday when we do the GaryCon stuff at 7 Central European time, which is 12 p.m. CST, which I guess is Central Standard Time or something. and hope to see you there. We'll be doing the socials, everything, so that you know where you can find us, where you can click to come and watch us. You can always watch us on our own channel, and I think Careful Cantrip will be hosting us as well. Or you can go if you on GaryCon. It's free. You don't have to have a ticket for this, and it is a one shot, which will be great. Roger is a dungeon master, and I hope to see you there. And I'm so looking forward to this. Thanks for the positive replies, and see you soon. Goodbye. I'm not doing the caca thing, although I did the caca thing now. See, I can never end this stuff. Thank you for doing the kiss emote. See you there. Goodbye.